Well, look, as you know, for reasons unbeknownst to me, this program has a limited relationship in terms of people coming on and talking, limited relationship with the Labor Party and, of course, therefore, with the last government. I've got to say, at the moment, things with Mr Luxon's office don't seem to be much jolly better. But Chris Hipkins, despite the fact that Andrew Campbell, the guy who, of course, spun for Jacinda Ardern, he's gone. He's gone off to some cushy job at Versace or Louis Vuitton or something. And there's a new person in who's running media relations for Chippy, for Chris Hipkins. We still haven't got an interview out of Chris Hipkins, and I'd love to talk to him about Labor's response to the election and everything else. But, well, we're not going to talk about it or anything to do with Labor if he won't front for an interview. But there is one person who did talk to me before the election. And strangely enough, he did very, very well as a result. His name's Greg O'Connor. He was standing against, he was the incumbent in Oharu for Labour against Nicola Willis, and he beat her against much expectation. And I'll be honest, I bumped into Greg at a party on Saturday night. I said, we must have you back on. And he said, sure. So I leapt at the opportunity, and he joins us now. Greg, welcome back to the platform, and congratulations on a win, I guess, that went against the tide.
Good morning, Sean. And look, I love the fact you're taking credit for me winning. The old saying is it, success has 1,000 fathers.
Yeah, you got the platform bump, it was, or the Plunket bump, as we call it.
Right. Oh, well, look, every bit helps, doesn't it?
Why do you think you did buck the trend?
Well, being cynical, more people voted for me than voted for my opponent. Look, every door, I knocked on a heck of a lot of doors here, and every door has a different person behind it, and every person will make up their own mind on what they know. So you've just got to be out there talking to people, make sure that they know who they're voting for, and they get the opportunity to ask what they're voting for. And that was what I tried to do.
Yeah. Greg, it would be fair to say you made, and there were some headlines about it before Election Day, you said we're going to lose. Did you think you were going to lose? And in fact, no, I'm going to say I think National would be disappointed with their election result. I think ACT would be disappointed with their election result. Do you think Labor's loss could have been worse?
I didn't say we were going to lose. I just said looking at the polls as they are today, at that moment in time, which, of course, that was what the polls were saying.
Yeah.
So I'm a just-in-time man, Sean. Look at things as they are at the time. So, look, I think, if my personal belief, I think the election had gone on a little longer. The campaign had gone on a little longer. I think Labor would have done better, because I think what had happened is finally people had started asking some hard questions of Messrs Luxon and Willis, and they didn't have the answers. Up until then, they'd had a free run.
Well, they are not the government alone now. It is a coalition government. And it's a lot of things to a lot of people. And they seem to have drawn up a coalition agreement which is paying off their constituents or making sure they get what they want. Where are they vulnerable? And does Labor have to do things differently in the new political environment?
Well, what I love is that you stand on a platform that Labor haven't done anything, and then spend your first 100 days dismantling what we've done.
Yeah.
So those two things don't match up. In fact, you know what I really am finding? Really, the reason I think I was able to hold on to this electorate was that I get out and about. I'm in pubs, I'm in sports grounds, I'm everywhere, I'm available.
Oh, a lot of politicians in pubs, it doesn't always do them a lot of good, according to Tory Whānau.
Well, two drink roll, two drink rolls. Drink roll, that's the one. Never go over that, because if you have three, you'll forget. No, I get around. And what's actually happened is that they're now telling people what we did do. One of the things that we were never good at in Labor was telling people what we'd done. I'll give you a really good example of that. Do you know that one of the most significant pieces of news 2 weeks ago was that the European Parliament had ratified the FTA? Now, that's huge. It wasn't, I don't know if you ran it on your show, there was no mention of it.
Wow, and for $55 million, they couldn't even cover that for you, Greg.
Oh, 55. Oh, good. Oh, that's right. I'm on Conspiracy Radio, aren't I? Yeah. You and Winston, Sean. You and Winston. I hear you have him on a bit. But no, that was incredibly good news for New Zealand. It was never covered. Finally, Radio New Zealand picked it up the next day.
Probably because you had too many people running around doing the weather in Māori and covering rainbow issues, Greg. Imagine if some of that money went to having a decent trade reporter.
Well, no, the news was there.
Yeah, but you didn't have anyone to cover because they were too busy doing something diverse.
Sean, get off your high horse. Let me just listen to you. You've asked me a question, I'll give you an answer. Is that now, the topic of this conversation is that now people are realising just how much we did do. Even this morning, Lake Onslow, they're cancelling Lake Onslow.
Yeah.
Well, have a wee read of the logic behind that. Some long-term. One of the biggest criticisms we always get in this country, everything's short-term, everything's 3-year electoral cycles. Well, let's do something that we're pretty confident in 50 years' time, people will be standing saying, boy, that was a good idea.
Yeah.
Wasn't it? Good idea.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be a good idea in the short-term 3-year political cycle. And I'm no expert on that Onslow. I had a look at it. When you're in Parliament, you like live in your silos a little bit. You can't really be across everything.
Yeah.
But I took
like the number of smoke shops in Northland. It's quite hard, isn't it? Well, that's a good excuse for them. Because we couldn't expect Chris Bishop to be across everything.
But it's been happening all year. That's been happening these guys just say stuff. You guys just, what you like, you repeat. And then all of a sudden it becomes a truism. Well, that's all very well, what do they say? If you repeat a lie enough times, it becomes true.
Yeah.
When you get into government, all of a sudden you've actually got to have some facts. And Luxon and co have been caught out time and time again. I mean, that was incredible that, firstly you think, anyone with half a brain would think Northland, one shop, like we're going to be expecting people to jump in a car and a tyre and go and get their packet of durries.
Well, I've got to say that was the story that the tobacco industry was telling behind the scenes. Greg, no matter how much the public didn't realise that we had the FTA and how great the Labor government was, you still got thumped at the polls. How does Labor change and re-engage? What's the long-term recovery plan, do you think, for Labor?
Well, that's what we really do have to decide. If there was